Well, hi everyone, and welcome again to Coffee with Craig. This is where myself, your host, Craig Hamilton Parker, a psychic medium, chats about all things that are happening in the world and puts a kind of a spiritual perspective, particularly a spiritual perspective from the standpoint of a psychic medium, on the things that are happening in the world. And right at the moment, the Pope is ill. And it's obviously going to be speculation about who will be the next Pope. So I'm going to look at some of the predictions I made about the Pope, look into those a little bit and consider what's happening around the Pope, and give you some food for thought about who will be the next Pope and some Pope prophecies and the future of the Catholic Church. So welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, good to see you all again, and as per usual, do please give us a thumbs up if you come here regularly, and subscribe if you're here for the first time, because it helps that algorithm in all ways if we can always get a thumbs up every time we go live. Now, we're going to talk about the Pope today and what's happening around the Pope. Now, obviously, he's ill at the moment, but those of you that follow this channel will know that I've already spoken about the Pope about before. In my predictions that I made for 2025, you'll remember that I predicted that we would have a new Pope in 2025, and I've mentioned this a few occasions on the channel. And I said this, and also I spoke about it again this year around January time as well, that I felt there would be illness for the Pope. So we're going to discuss some of that in this video, but let's just review what I said there. Now, in my earlier predictions, and I'll put the clips of this eventually at the end bit, you know, the little bit at the end where I do the reviews, I'll stick a bit on the end with that, so the clips from the actual original videos. But you'll remember I said that we'd have a new Pope in 2025. And this obviously it now appears to be the case, possibly, because the Pope's not very well. Now, I'm not speculating whether he's going to die or not. That's not really very nice, is it? But it's unlikely that the Pope will be able to carry on with his duties, we could say, because of the illness. There's been a lot of speculation about his illness. There's been some wrong information out there about his illness, saying that he had kidney failure, and that apparently is not the case. He had some problems with his kidneys, but he's hopefully making a bit of a recovery at the moment. So let's hope he gets through this. But it's going to be very difficult for him with his duties in the way ahead. Now, the present rules say that the Pope must die in office. Well, it used to say that, but the Pope will always live to the end of his reign, as it were. But we've had some exceptions with that in the past, because in recent history, it was Pope, Pope Benedict, wasn't it? He resigned in 2013 because of illness and became the first Pope to step down in a great long time, since I think it was Pope Celestine or Celestine V or something, in something like 1294, I think it was. He stepped down way before, so a precedent had been made, but it's usual for the popes to continue in office to the day they die. And Pope Francis seems to be saying that he is going to keep his popeship, whatever you would call it, his office in the papacy. His name was going to continue ad vitam, which means for life. So his inclination is want to stay there till the end of his life. So, but it's, so it's unlikely that he'll want to retire. but hopefully he'll recover from this this illness. Unfortunately, he did not have a complete kidney failure and so forth. So there's good hope that he will continue. But anyway, I saw a new Pope in 2025, I said. Now, sometimes the sort of predictions I make with you kind of come out of the blue. It's like something that sort of flashed to me, and I remember a dream I've had or something that come to mind. Because funny thing with clairvoyance, it sometimes comes unconsciously. I hardly know I'm doing it sometimes. And you get it in a flash sometimes when we're just speaking. And I had a couple of occasions like that because I talked about the Pope and I mentioned it again, and I suddenly saw the future Pope, and I felt that the future Pope would speak in German. Now, this may not necessarily mean that he'll be German or Austrian, etc., but I just heard him speaking German, so he only be able to speak German. And it makes you wonder, what candidates could this include? So I'm going to give a bit of thought for that as well. So that was one of my predictions, and I'm going to dig into that a bit deeper and see, can we work out who the future Pope will be? And let's have your comments about this. I'm not a Catholic or anything. I don't know anything about Catholicism. I'm not an expert on these things, but I get visions and insights, and let's see if they make sense this time round. Now, I also had another flash when I was talking again with you online, and suddenly I saw the future Pope again, and I said I saw that he was associated with the image of a swan. Now, that seems an odd image, as far as I'm aware. When you go, I went around the Vatican once, and it had a symbol of a bee for the Pope, and I seem to remember, I think it was the bee, or was that Venice with the bee with the, I don't know, but no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not sure. But anyway, I've certainly not seen association with a swan with a Pope. And I wonder if there's any swan symbolism associated around any of the potential future candidates to become future Pope. So looking ahead, when the Pope's had his day and he's moved on, or he's finished, he's resigned, or whatever's happened to him, we could perhaps look into think who is a potential based upon those two ideas that came to me. So first of all, I thought, well, how can I do this? I got a lot of research to do that. I thought, let's try AI. Let's try ChatGDP and see if it can come up with some suggestions. So I'm just going to see I'm going to show you some of the things it suggested. Now, it's funny with ChatGDP and the rest of them. It's like chatting to somebody sometimes. And it pointed out a few potentials. It says there's not that many that are proficient in German. One of them is Cardinal Rainer Maria Woelki, if I've got that name right. He's the Archbishop of Cologne in Germany. Okay, he's born in Cologne in 1956. So he's a bit younger than me, so he's a bit young for the job. And he's been a prominent figure in the German Catholic Church. He was appointed Archbishop of Berlin in 2011 and later returned to Cologne as Archbishop in 2014. His leadership roles and influences make him a potential candidate. So that's one. So we've got an actual German Pope that could be German cardinal that could be a potential Pope. The other one was Cardinal Christoph Schönborn. He's Archbishop of Vienna, Austria, fluent in German, of course, being Austrian. And he's been a significant voice in the church, known for his theological expertise and involvement in various synods. So that's another potential candidate. And Cardinal Reinhard Marx, Archbishop of Munich and Freisling, Germany, born in 1953. I'm old, 1954, so he's older than me. And he's been influential in the church's economic and social teachings. He was elevated to the cardinalate in 2010 and has served in various significant roles within the church. And finally, it gives us one more option on it, is Cardinal Koch, president of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, a Swiss native. He is fluent in German, has been active in the Diocles or whatever it's called. So that's quite interesting. We've got a few possible candidates there that suggested for a future pope. I wonder if it could be one of those. Now, I'm no expert in these things. Those of you that are Catholics will know a lot more than I do about this. Well, actually, if you're Catholics, you shouldn't be watching this channel because Catholicism doesn't like astrology or mediumship. It has to be said, but I think that's going to change very much in the future. I remember there was a big investigation here into spiritualism years ago by the Archbishop of Canterbury, obviously not Catholic, but and they and what was his name now? Oh, his name's gone now, but it goes back, and basically they said they thought it was okay and sincere, and he got Cardinal Lang, Cosmo Lang, that was it. Cosmo Lang was the Archbishop of Canterbury going back years ago, and he kind of thought spiritualism was all right, but he got a lot of trouble about that. But anyway, I think things are going to change a lot with the attitude towards these, because I'm going to talk a bit in a minute about some of the visions I've had and some of the things I've said before about the coming new age in the future, and how would a great spiritual awakening change the course of the Catholic Church and all the churches of the world ultimately. But I'm thinking of it in terms of Catholicism at this point, particularly with these thoughts about a possible future pope. So the other thing that I saw, I saw swan, didn't I? I saw a swan image, and I said the swan associates with. Now that's an odd sort of image that you don't usually associate with Catholic Church. Some of the suggestions that came up from the AI, which can do all the work for you in seconds, but it mentions about associations with the Swan and Christian symbolism. Going back, this is going back a long time. This isn't current, but St. Hugh of Lincoln, known as the patron saint of the swans. St. Hugh had a pet swan that became a symbol of their unique bond. And while he's a historical figure, the swan symbol is closely tied to his legacy. So could that be a link in somewhere? Could it be something to do with Britain and Lincoln or something like that? Is there something in the legacy that's going to come back that somehow connects into that? I mean, these are just threads at the moment, but it will be interesting when a new pope is elected to look back at this video and see if our clues are coming through correctly or not. And there's also the Order of the Swan, a historical order where members wore a medal of the Blessed Virgin attached to a swan, symbolizing various interpretations, says the AI. That's from newsadvent.org. And Martin Luther, also referred to as the swan in certain prophecies. His family coat of arms featured a swan. While not directly related to the Catholic hierarchy, this association is notable in Christian history. A Lutheran? That would be very unusual indeed, wouldn't it? So there's some interesting connections there, isn't there? I thought, well, is there any connections with these other cardinals that we've talked about here? So the chat GDP, which was really interesting, the way it puts associations together. And now, is it picking up some clues here? We had those other candidates. The first one was Cardinal Rainer Maria Woelki. Sorry, I pronounced the name wrong. I'm bound to have done. His first name, Rainer, phonetically resembles rain, the German word for pure. Swans are often symbols of purity, which could be a subtle connection. Interesting, the way it picks up those connections. Could be, couldn't it? And then Cardinal Christoph Schönborn, this is the other one I mentioned. The name Schönborn, again, probably pronounced wrong by me, translates to beautiful spring in German. Swans are often associated with beauty and grace, potentially linking the name to the swan symbol. Okay, making it fit a bit, but interesting. And the other one is Cardinal Reinhard Marx. While his surname directly connects to the reformer Martin Luther, known as the Swan, in certain prophecies, it's an interesting linguistic coincidence. Now, which one do I feel out of those? Now, I kind of feel Cardinal Reinhard Marx. that kind of draws me. And something about the word Marx, of course, because Marx is associated with Marx and Engels, who produced the Communist Manifesto. But a weird thing came to me, because we were kind of talking about going to see Karl Marx's grave and film something in Highgate. And just before doing this video today, I dreamed about Marx. Now, whether that's because of my associations before going to sleep about thinking about Highgate, or could that be something to do with somehow the connection with this? Could Cardinal Reinhard Marx be the next Pope? I don't know what the odds of that are like. I mean, those of you that know more than me can have a look and correct me where I'm wrong here. I'm sure I'm probably wrong with this, but this is like today, I'm speculation. This is today. I'm not claiming this is to be clairvoyance, but it's interesting that if those bits of clairvoyance that I had before, can I work out where they're coming from? You see, people think, you know it all, Craig, just ask me this, ask me that. And I don't. I get bits and flashes and ideas, and things come, like I say, through a mirror darkly. And I get parts of it and bits of it. And clairvoyance is a bit like that. Even when you have a reading, you get most of it, but you might not get all of it. You see parts. So could that be the connection there? So the prophecy suggests a German-speaking Pope with a symbolic connections to a swan emerging in 2025, says ChatGDP. While no candidate perfectly fits the elements, Cardinals Woelki, Schönborn, and Marx are prominent German-speaking figures of the Church. Well, so that's quite an interesting thought, isn't it? I mean, that's a starting point with this. Could we be onto something there? I'll leave it up to some of you guys there. And we get some really interesting comments. So if you're coming to this video, go and have a look at the comments, because some of you astrologers might look into those names, perhaps, and see if you can connect with me to see, that looks interesting, Craig, because this one does look like it's got a prominent possibility. So some of you astrologers that watch this channel, see if you can come up with anything. Now, I mean, the Catholics don't like us doing astrology, which is a great shame, because there's so much in the Catholic, in the Christian traditions, that points to the stars and the sky, and even, the birthplace of Jesus we were led to by a star. And the wise men from the East, it is claimed, were ancient astrologers. Some say they were the NAADI astrologers, but some of you have worked with me, and they came to the birth of Christ knowing that they had to follow the star from the East. Thoughts there. And there's also a lot of thoughts also that Jesus even went to India too. So Jesus did go along the Silk Road up through into Tibet and maybe down into India to the very cave that I went to, that is supposed to have been the cave where Jesus sat and meditated. This is not in the Bible, of course, but this is in the missing years of Jesus, has been claimed. But there was a cave down near Rishikesh in the Himalayas that I sat in, not the main one that's on the public view, but there's one that you can be taken to where allegedly Jesus sat and meditated, and other great yogis had sat in that place and meditated and found their enlightenment. So this is considered a very important cave, tremendous energy, and goodness gracious, you could feel the energy there. It was an amazing place, right on the bend of a turn of the Ganges River. Just sit there quietly and meditate in the place that Jesus may have sat. There's different names. I'll go into that as another video sometime again. I've got a video I made about that a long time ago, but that he went under a different name and so forth. But it does seem to be the case that he may have gone to India. Anyway, I'm going off target here as again, right? But despite the fact that the Catholic Church doesn't like any form of people making predictions and so forth, there are, of course, many predictions within the Catholic tradition. The Fatima visionaries talk about a time of 20 years of great peace and so forth to come into the world. But there's also the very important one, which is an Irish saint called St. Malachy, who also wrote, also spoke about the prophecies of the Pope, as they're called. Now, where have I put those? I've got some notes on that somewhere here. Here we go. Yeah, no, I made some notes about St. Malachy, and let's look at some of those, what he said. Because now, the incredible thing about St. Malachy, he wrote 112, it was, short Latin phrases which supposedly describe each of the popes from Celestine II to the last pope, which is called Petrus Romanus. Now, the Petrus Romanus, Roman Pope, is supposed to be the last Pope. Now, according to his phrases and these Latin phrases, it should have been our current Pope, St. Francis. It should be the last Pope. So he should be the Petrus Romanus. And that is supposed, when the last Pope comes in these predictions of Malachy, there is supposed to be the end of days, that Rome burns and is destroyed. But when you compare the description of Petrus Romanus, there's very, very little there that I could see that seems to connect with Pope Francis. Francis is supposed to have been the 112th Pope, the last Pope, meaning he'll be the final Pope of the prophecy, and therefore this is the end of days. The prophecy actually states this. Let me get this right. Oh, crikey, it's worded badly. In persecuna extrema SRE. I'm not going to read it in Latin. It's got it in Latin, but let me read it in English. During the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will sit Peter the Roman, who will feed his flock through many tribulations, after which the seven-hilled city, brackets Rome, will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge the people. Okay, so it's talking about the end of days there. So a lot of interpretations suggest that Pope Francis could be this final pope, given the current global crisis, of course, and all the internal church struggles. Some say that his successor will be the real Petrus Romanus, leading the church into the final transformation or the final turmoil. Now, I had a look around some of the Catholic websites and Catholic YouTube channels to see what they say about this. And some of them say, oh, no, the interpretations of St. Malachy have all been misunderstood because there were a number of what they call anti-popes, a bit like antichrists, you know. There was 2, possibly 3 popes that should never have been pope. They were not ordained correctly, or they were not properly, I don't know quite what their reasoning is, but they weren't real popes. So after this, there will be 3 more popes. So we're kicking the ball down the line here a little bit. I don't know really where this whole idea of anti-pope comes in. I think this is a bit of a fringe thing, I'd imagine, within Catholicism. But and the idea of an anti-pope is a very odd sort of idea, I think. But could it be that this is, you know, St. Francis doesn't seem to fit in with this final pope idea. And when St. Francis goes, could there be 2 more? Or could he be the last pope? And could this be the end of days, as they call it? Now, I don't believe that is the case. Let me see, what else have we got? Yeah, so that's the main things, I think, from that. I mean, you can look at, there's some good videos out there about St. How do you pronounce his name? Malachy. You can go and look them up. There's some good ones on the History Channel, for example, did a good video on that I went and had a look at as well, which is really quite interesting. You can see how accurate they were, even apparently predicting the assassination attempt on the Pope that happened, the other Pope, you know. So that's quite interesting in its way. But, you know, so those are some other Christian thoughts about the future of the papacy and the future of the Catholic Church. But does that kind of fit in with what I feel? So I have to stand alone with this because I get other things. First and foremost, I don't feel that St. Francis is anything like Petrus Romanus at all. So, and I feel he is not the final pope. My feeling is there will be other popes. Now, I did a deep meditation on this, I've been working a lot with the idea, what is this future golden age all about? I've spoken about a long time that I feel there's going to be a reawakening. So I did a deep meditation on this, and some kind of newish things came to me here. Now, I kind of saw, with the coming, there's going to be we're going to enter a new and better age in the future, most definitely. And I had a kind of quite a beautiful vision of the Catholic Church being completely transformed, completely changed beyond belief. I saw this kind of a kind of a time of the coming of a golden age, not with like a great one-off Messiah coming. This is what the Christian teachings say, and they say that Jesus comes again and so forth. But I don't see it as like that. I see it not only, on the one hand, I speak a lot about how each of us will waken up. This will be a gradual awakening of the whole of humanity, but also amongst that will be some very, very high spiritual beings, not one, not two, but multiple. And I felt that each of them would kind of move towards the religions of the world to help them. It's like the early days, they talked about the ancient rishis that came from Shiva and that were multiple beings. I mean, that could be a spaceman type of story, actually, when you think about it. But this group of awakened beings brings about the unification of religions. And I don't mean the merging of religions, but more like the recognition of the common spirituality of all of the religions of the world. And I think we're already beginning to do that to an extent. The Catholic Church has reached out to Hinduism, for example, which was always seen as an evil sort of elephant-headed, idolatrous type of religion. But the Catholic Church has certainly had a certain amount of reaching out. And also towards Tibetan Buddhism, for example, as well. So there has been a bringing down of the barriers of, extreme rejection of one another has certainly happened. And I feel that's going to happen more and more. We're starting to see the beginning of mutual tolerance, which has got to be the basis. Because when Sai Baba said, there's only one religion, and that is the religion of love. Right. So that is really important. There's one religion. There's only the religion. There's only one God, and that is an omnipresent God, a God that is everywhere. That's common to all of all religions. And he said there's only one language. There's only one teaching of religions, and that's the language of the heart. What comes from the heart. What's written in the books is secondary. That's come further down the line. But the essence of all the religions of the world is this surely it, isn't it? And at the heart of it all is this idea that God is love, God is truth, God is peace, God is omnipresent, and God is us. These things that I do, you can do also, Jesus said. So we find that we are also in the Godhead. And this is where kind of the Catholic Church has a very big difference to Eastern teachings. Eastern teachings often will say, and not just Eastern, but Western teachings and Christian mysticism would say this as well, would say we are all God. God is one. It's all one. We're all one. Everything, when you realize the ultimate of the universe, you understand the oneness. And that is, we are all from one consciousness. And that one consciousness is actually God dreaming our universe. That's how you would kind of look at it. But some people always want to separate me from God and say God is that and I am this. There's the two worlds. And that is also true, but it's because it's a paradox in many ways. God can be something that is separate from you, that you kind of worship as a Godhead, as a God figure, as and the idols, as it were, of India and so forth are all representations of aspects of that one God. But ultimately, we are God, we are one. And if you look at the teachings of Jesus, ultimately, that's what it teaches. It teaches we're all one humanity. We're all one. God is love. End of story. And it's written on a lot of the churches when you look around. And I said, why don't they read the messages above the door? So I saw that the Catholic Church will reconsider its doctrine. In fact, I was seeing like the Catholic Church developed its basis of its beliefs today from the Council of Nicaea. And this was where they had to decide. Now, what we got this religion, we've got all these gospels, got thousands of gospels around. We got the gospel of this and the gospel of that. Which are the main gospel? What are we going to take as our teachings? As people are asking, and they're all arguing because they're saying one thing and saying another. So we got to choose our doctrines now, and we've got to make them kind of be almost similar. Now, when you take all the gospels in the Bible, you'll see that sometimes things get messed around. Some have the things that contradict each other. Some things are missed out. Critical things are missed out in some of the gospels, like the resurrection. I think it's in Mark. It's not in Mark, is it, or is it not in Luke? I'm not sure. But one of the gospels doesn't even mention the resurrection. That's kind of important, isn't it? And the ancient Romans, and Constantine in particular, had wanted any Christianity to fit in with Rome. And Justinius and others, and Justinius's wife, who's a bit of a maverick as well, was all wanted to sort of twist it around to make it fit. Like Paul, on his road to Damascus, was a Roman. He had his conversion, but his teachings would have come from the much more Roman teaching, Mithraism and things, which believed in the idea of the anointed one, which brought the idea of the Christ. So there was a lot of Roman ideas mixing in with what would have been what Jesus was teaching. Everybody wants to adopt it. Like, it's even happening with what I do. I find certain people out there say, "Oh, Craig is making this prophecy, and this prophesizes this guru." And I think, actually, I didn't say that, But they said, "No, but this one." So people grab on your things and make it fit to what they want, and that happens in all spiritual teachings, and particularly when you get a great transformative spiritual teaching, like a teaching of Jesus. It gets twisted around. So the Council of Nicaea kind of threw some stuff out. So we're not going to have reincarnation in this. As you sow, so shall you reap. No, we can't have karma in this, and so on. Then there's lots of stuff that was originally in Christianity that was changed by omission most of the time, and you can find that in the Gnostic Gospels. But I'm going on. But the Council of Nicaea, I feel those teachings from the Council of Nicaea, I reckon, are going to change. I feel something will happen, not in 2025, but in the future popes. There's going to be a movement towards changing what is accepted at Nicaea and accepting more tolerance towards, certainly, other Gospels and the Gnostic Gospels, and also more tolerance towards other religions. And this will be tolerance and will extend, and even a tolerance of prophecy. So people like myself, I think, would be more tolerated, and astrology would be much, I would lovely, me and Jane talk about trying to build our spiritual center, but we're trying to do so we can do our spiritual work. Our little ashram that we're building in Italy. Have a look in the description if you want to donate. Please have a look if you're interested in donating to it. But it seems a shame there's all those churches around. Why couldn't they be used as meditation centers and places where people get direct experience of the Godhead, rather than just being told what the Godhead is and told and given boring lectures? Why can't it be a hands-on, let's become enlightened attitude? And I think that's what's going to happen with the Golden Age, and all those places, all those holy places can be opened up as new places, not just to worship the past, but to become flower beds for the future, and to open where people can become enlightened and come awakened and meet intelligent and awakened and spiritually minded people, not just be told what to believe. Now, that's a big step for any of the religions to take, and it won't take a year. It will take many years for this to happen. But when there is these spiritual people in the world, it's going to make some major changes. And one of the things that I saw was the Pope kneeling before a great saint. It was a vision I had, and it's very similar to what happened. It's very reminiscent of what happened when the Pope Innocent III, I think it was, knelt before St. Francis. Pope Innocent III was, as far as I'm aware, was a typical sort of Pope, laying down the law here, there, and the other, the control of the church, the power of the church. But St. Francis's message had become so powerful, so strong, that the Pope actually kneeled before St. Francis and recognized him as the saint. And St. Francis's ideas were very revolutionary. Hence the Pope that we have calling himself after St. Francis is really very interesting. And I'm surprised he wasn't more revolutionary, because St. Francis of Assisi in the early 13th century was transformative force and a very dangerous, outspoken force in his time. But I see something like that happening again. I'm seeing a pope kneeling before a saint. And that saint, I felt, came from the East. It wasn't necessarily a Christian saint. It was a saint that bridged between the religions, may not be of any religion, may have come from the East, may have come from India or the East, I felt, and would have a major change to the Catholic Church. If a pope did that, you imagine what consternation it would cause in the world, because in the 13th century, the news would have gradually moved around, but here it would be instant round the world. So, and I feel there's also going to be some other new revelations too, as the church opens up its archives in the years to come. This is not all in 2025, but this is to come in the future of the Catholic Church, because I feel they've got a lot of lost scrolls, a lot of original biblical texts and translations of the Bible, and pre-altered versions of the Bible in the Vatican archives somewhere. And we'll find that things like, I think the resurrection was added in, actually, or had been changed in the way the resurrection is presented to the world. I believe Jesus died on the cross as such, like a near-death experience, but was revived and even manifested in the upper room that time. That the upper room is like almost like a seance room, in which we get transfiguration, where faces appear on top of people and you see the face. It's like a physical circle in a way. And if a physical circle can exist within spiritualism, why not in those days? I mean, that's another whole topic of debate and another reason for me to be seen as as an infidel here. But I mean, these are things that are going to be things that I feel are going to be reawakened in the religions of the world, and will help bring the worlds together, and will help bring our common knowledge that all the religions are the same thing. Ultimately, they're all different ways of coming to understanding about our place in the world, but they're also about finding the same source. And when you look and you knock the door and the door opens, what do you find? You find love, you find truth, you find the infinite, you find the Brahma, you find Allah, you find Jehovah. You all are the same one thing ultimately. And it's almost even people get angry when you say that, but it is the case. And I think when a person looks for themselves and trusts their own experience, you find that the enlightenment is something that everybody can attain to and find, and is already there in the great peace that passes understanding. It's there in the background of all of our consciousnesses. So, and the Pope himself in the future, I think, will change the role. This is where it might be that the case is that maybe Saint Malachy's predictions come to an end on the 112th Pope, because the role of the Pope, I feel, was going to change, and maybe it won't be quite the same way that a Pope is now. Just like when we had the English Civil War, and we had the end of the kings in England, we still kept our kings as a symbolic. When we brought back Charles II, he became a symbolic figurehead of kingship. He couldn't tell you what's what. He couldn't lay down the rules. He couldn't raise taxes. He couldn't start wars. He couldn't have armies march. And he was a symbolic person. And I feel that the Pope in the future will become more of a figurehead, will be less tied into trying to run the administrative side of the church, of much more of a figurehead that's seen as a representation of the Catholic Christian faith on earth. And when that happens, I feel that the much more democratic and more practical organization with much more voting about the way the church moves forward will happen. And this will actually create, I feel, a much more healthy Catholic Church, but also my feeling is for the future that will draw in other faiths into it. More people will become Catholics, as it were, but not Catholics in the sense that we've got nowadays with all the fear of hell stuff. When this is going to take some time, but I'm seeing the Catholic Church being completely transformed and focusing much more on the idea that God is love rather than the fear of hell. And that idea will be dropped and seen for what it is, as being a misunderstanding of ancient teachings and being a misunderstanding of the fact that all beings will enter the kingdom of heaven. All beings are capable of love, and all beings are capable of ending the sin in themselves, which is like their bad karma, can be dropped from them. And all beings are capable of becoming awakened beings. And that is much the teaching of many other religions of the world, particularly in the Sanatana Dharma based religions. This is spirituality that I'm talking about here, because like I've said before, I feel that spirituality and religion are two different things in my book. Religion is not spiritual, certainly not the way we have it at the moment. It can be spiritual, it can protect the spiritual, it can harbor the spiritual, but spiritual has to be in each individual. Only the individual can be spiritual through your personal experience, by your personal dedication, by doing what you say you are, and being what you are, and acting in a good way in the world, rather than just, hands that help are greater than lips that pray, they say. It's important that we do our work within the world and we act according to not just rules and regulations, but through the draw of our heart, as it were, the language of the heart that I spoke about earlier on. So I saw all that, and I think there will be a great reform in the Catholic Church, which will become great again, I feel. And it will actually, many other religions will fall under its umbrella without actually being absorbed into it. It's not like for example, the Church of England would not necessarily be the Church of England anymore. It would fall back in and become part of the fold of the Catholic Church with its own independence, but not with a pope at the head of it in the same way that we have it today, but the Pope as a figurehead and a sort of a much more flexible sort of democratic type of church, but basing itself on these many new things that are going to be happening in the world that are going to be transformative, and these very, very powerful spiritual figures that I feel will walk the earth in the course of time. And I hope it will be in my lifetime, and I feel it will. I feel it will be in my lifetime. So there's some interesting food for thought there. So perhaps Malachy's prophecy of the lost pope is more the possibility, the ending of the last pope being the last pope of that kind, and that there will be a vision I see of a future leader coming from the East that will transform the world, and a new form of Christian spirituality also will emerge, which would would blend Eastern and Western mysticism together, and would draw upon its own mystical heritage, which it's kind of rejected in many ways. There's a tremendous mystical background to the early Christians. When you go in the catacombs in Rome, you see the markings of the earlier beliefs in Christianity, which were much more simple in many ways. The first Christian teachings were much more simple. Today, everybody likes rules, regulations, and want to control people. Religion becomes a form of propaganda. Religion seems to work through fear, but really it also works through hatred of other religions, and it's about rejection, not love. But I feel that religion will find its roots again and get back to its very simple teachings, which is the teachings of love, the teachings of humanitarianism, and the teachings of the awakening, the anointment, the Christ consciousness. Those are the Christian versions of what is also taught in the East. And I think we'll see in the future people beginning to recognize that we're all talking about the same thing. We're all the same people. We're all talking a slightly different language. But let's get to the heart of the matter, which is the language of the heart. So those are my thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed my little rant there today. But also, it's interesting to see how it goes with things as we will eventually, of course, see a new pope, and as some of those things come to pass. And I don't claim to get it all right, but I get quite a lot right, and so it's quite interesting. And I'd be interested, like I said, to have a look in the comments and write something in the comments to see if others have put another insights into this. And if you hate what I say too, put it in there. If you think I'm completely off with this, do let me know. Okay, so thanks for joining me, and please do have a look in the description before you go as well. If you'd like to give a donation to our spiritual center in Italy, that would be wonderful. And if you'd like to become a patron or join my workshops that are online now, I do the workshops being group spiritual readings in which you can hear me demonstrate mediumship and prove my gift to you, hopefully. Okay, thanks. See you soon. Bye for now. If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, the Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine. I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short. I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. The marvellous person she is. She does something extraordinary that could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right? A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023. I've said it before and I say it again. I feel Israel, with the help from the USA, will strike the Iranian nuclear facilities. I said that there would be an earthquake that would shake New York. At this time, I've been sensing that for a while that there's going to be a big earthquake of some sort. And this could well come up during April period. I'm seeing a bridge collapsing, actually the whole infrastructure of it going. I predict something very dark happens to President Joe Biden. he's being pulled from power, sacked, as it were, and quite close to the election time. But I kind of sense it's more to do with illness, perhaps, senility, and people stopping him because of that. So it could even be that a new candidate will run for the presidential nominee. I predict that Trump will win the November 2024 election. And I feel very strongly that the black vote is going to move towards Trump. See him as a bit of a cool guy. I can't see Trump being put in jail despite what they're throwing at him. I can't see a jail sentence with him. But I get the feeling one of the candidates has an attempt on the candidate's life. Could there have been a plan to assassinate either him or Trump, perhaps? There's going to be an assassination attempt on Trump, I think. And that will fail. But he might maybe get wounded or something like that. A hit or attack on our airplanes, on passenger flights or even freight flights. Because I also had, at the similar time, I was also seeing this image of helicopters on fire as well.
I seem to see like the west of America on fire and the east of America underwater, huge winds. And I actually saw, just like we had a major problem here in the UK where a tower block went up on fire, I see a tower block deserted